Welcome to another Dragonlance Hangout. It is Krynn Brook Green the Fourth. My name is Adam, and today I'm discussing, well, I have old show notes showing here. It's Dragonlance's anniversary today. That's right, the 4th is the date that's in my calendar for whatever reason as Dragonlance's anniversary. And we know that it was this month that Dragons of Deceit DL1 was released originally, and that was the first Dragonlance product, full stop, to ever be released. And that's pretty exciting. And, you know, we've gotten a slow leakage of, sounds gross, a slow leakage of Dragonlance content from that point that sort of became almost like a horrible waterfall of sorts that ended with the DLA Dragonlance Adventures until you went to the book side of things. And that was a deluge until very, very, recently. And ultimately, it all came down to Wizards of the Coast saying they didn't want to do it anymore. So that's why we no longer have any Dragonlance things. That's why we can't have nice things. All that being said, I thought I would just get on and hang out for a little while with you guys, if and you'd like to hang out. To just rap a little bit about not only the projects that I'm doing with Dragonlance, but also just Dragonlance in general. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I want to make sure that, everyone's aware of it. And if you care about Dragonlance and you want to sort of celebrate with me, that you're, one, you know about it, and two, you're welcome to join. So I would like to take a moment and thank the DL Saga YouTube members and Patreon patrons, and invite you to consider becoming a member or patron. You can even pick up Dragonlance Media or get $10 by signing up to startplaying.games in the description below. And maybe we'll start there with startplaying.games. So I started doing paid dungeon mastering and reaching out to all the different players that I've ever played with, if I've had their email address, asking them for reviews so I could bolster up my website and make sure that there was this nice symbiotic connection between my website, this YouTube channel, and my profile on startplaying.games, so that we could just start to play. Hey, Dylan, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. So that I could make sure that the understanding of me doing actual plays is something that people can sign up for, and they're going to get a very dedicated experience through startplaying.games. And I've run a whole bunch of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition games on my other YouTube channel, where we were going through the First Quest audio CD game, which has 4 different adventures in it, and it basically takes you from 1st to 3rd or 4th level. And it's just a way to it's like Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition Lite. So it's a way of introducing you to the game system in a very nice and friendly way, but also has really great audio tracks to help introduce players through other people vocalizing what characters are going to do, what it's like playing in a TTRPG game, and sitting around a table and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun to run, and it just ended yesterday, the very last session. We went through 11 different sessions of 2 hours each with that whole thing. Now that that's done, I'm going to be focusing on DL1 Dragons of Deceit, which I've already run before on this channel, but I'm doing it this time through Start Playing. I've got 8 players lined up. Everyone has a Hero of the Lance, the pre-generated characters, and we're going to be running through them starting tomorrow night at 2-hour intervals from 6 to 8 p.m. Mountain Time. And it should, right here on this channel, it should be a whole lot of fun. I am really looking forward to it. Hey, Goldmoon, how you doing? Speaking of, you were just in the game with me last night. So I'm really looking forward to tomorrow's game. It should start off a whole weekly series of just seeing how other people interpret these Heroes of the Lance through their own decisions, and how the Dragonlance Saga unfolds based on their own interpretations. And I've played DL1 and DL2 with players that know and love the books and try to play the characters like the books, and players who don't know anything about the books or the world or anything, and they just play a character and run through it. And it is a blast every single time because everyone does something slightly different. For example, in the very first time I ever ran DL1 in AD&D, which is what I'm going to be running it in tomorrow, we went to Haven, and some people don't ever get to Haven. They get, on the road toward Haven mostly, and then they get chased into Darkenwood, and from Darkenwood they take Pegasus out to the East Wall Mountains, the Forbidden Mountain Range, and that's where they enter Zaxxaroth. But you could just as easily go all the way around to Haven, which we did that one time. From Haven, got into the White Rage River, crashed into Darkenwood, and that's where they took the Pegasus out. But you could choose not to do any of that and just go straight from Solace to Zaxxaroth. So kind of hoping they don't do that tomorrow, just because there's so much exciting stuff that you can do outside of that. But hey, Scott, how you doing? How do you find me? AdamPC9. That's how you find me. I'll put it in the show notes after I'm done here. There should be a link. Actually, there might be a link in there right now. Yeah. Actually, no, I don't have it in there right now. Just look up Adam PC and it should be there. Hopefully you can find it with Adam PC. If not, there's an issue. But I'll make sure to add the link for tomorrow in the notes below. Hey, DCBs, how you doing? You think it'd be awesome to play without knowing any of the story? Oh, yeah. Especially because it's such an epic story, right? I mean, you're going from a world that literally has no magic. I'm sorry, not no magic, no healing at all. The idea of dragons 1,000 years old are just myths that people sort of scoff at. Religious groups are political groups, the Seekers. And there are no, the old gods are never mentioned by anyone because no one in this generation was even around when they were there, unless you're like an elf or a dwarf. Dwarves don't interact with anyone outside of Thorbarden, or if you're the Nidar dwarves, you rarely ever interact with any other human beings. And the elves don't interact with anyone. The Quonisty elves are becoming much more insular, and they're really doing hit and run tactics at this point. There's this massive war brewing in the east that is quickly encroaching on the west and is literally at the doorstep by the time the adventure starts, but none of the players know that. They have no idea. They're just coming together at after 5 years of trying to find some sort of answer or anything to the missing gods, and they're all sort of like hands in the air, like, oh, what are you going to do? We didn't find anything. And then they're just thrust into this whole thing. So characters like Fizban, they're not in DL1. There's an old man that you can interpret as Fizban, but it's not really him. The Staff of Magius isn't in it. There's a staff that allows Raceland to use a couple spells, but it's not really that. There's no connection with Fist and Daedalus. And when this was originally released, we're talking about it. I might as well just show it. When this was originally released, there was absolutely no moons of Krynn and alignments and orders of high sorcery. None of that is in this. So Raceland gets no benefit from the moons. There's no tracking moons. All of that is in later supplements. And so I'm running this as in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition at the year that it was released. So there's no Unearthed Arcana. It's just the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Monster's Manual and this, DL1, Dragons of Despair. That's it. It really closes in what, for people who are not familiar with Dragonlance, it can be a bit overwhelming. Especially when it came out in the 4th Age and it's expanded into the 5th Age with 200 novels and all sorts of supplements. It can get in like 5 different gaming editions. So it can get very intimidating for new players. So when you start with this DL1 at AD&D, when it was originally released in the way that it was originally released, it's just a dip in a toe into a whole new world. So for example, Kender didn't exist, right, in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. So what'd they do? They detailed out... Oh, wrong page. There we are. They detailed out that it's basically the halfling, use all of the halfling stats, and just add 2 things, taunt and fearlessness. That's it. That's a Kender. And so that's what I did when I did my adjustment to Dungeons & Dragons 2024 edition, or 5.5, or 20, however you want to refer to it. But it's just a super simple way of approaching this. There's three things that you always have to remember. Gold has no value. Even you can't even rely on swapping out gold for steel because it depends on the region of the world you're in. In Solace and Haven, they use the EMOS as the primary coin of value. And then cleric spells have not existed for 300 years, of course, since the Cataclysm. No dragons for 1,000 years. And that's kind of the jump off point. And it's 6 to 8 players at level 4 to 6. 8 players. Now, I know people who can't handle 4 players or 6 players, let alone 8 players. I love handling large groups of players. I think it is infinitely more interesting. Yes, people get talked over, but that's what the Dungeon Master is there for, to go back, say, okay, hold on a second. I heard you. We're going to get back to you. I just want to let this person finish. And, you just direct the conversation so everyone knows that they are going to be heard, that they are going to have a voice. But because there's so many people, it's just like if you're standing around with 8 different people trying to decide what to do. People are going to talk over each other. And that's how it happens in the adventure. That's how it happens in real life. And so it's just a natural way of doing it. But I like it because that means one character for every single player. There's additional NPCs that get thrown into this adventure. For example, Quete is a tribe that is decimated before the Quayshu are decimated. And so one of the refugees running away, the heroes have an opportunity of catching up with him. So his name's Nighthawk. He can join the campaign. When they're in Zaxxaroth, there's a Quayshu Plains woman that's hiding that you can discover. If you do, she'll join your group and she'll come with you. So you can add on extra characters too. So you could literally walk around with like 10 to 12 different characters in the game. If you're actually going to be going and collecting all NPCs and stuff. It could happen. It's unlikely, but it could. And they say even if you only have 6 players and no one's playing Goldmoon, then always default to the fact that Riverwind's going to be an NPC and that Goldmoon's an NPC, and she does whatever Riverwind basically says, which is a little bit backwards if you ask me. She's the princess, but what are you going to do? All right, let's see. Focuses the players, confines the power progression, slows down, causes the player to role play more. Yeah. And that's what I like about AD&D is that it does encourage you to think more and role play more. Again, group dependent. Some people do that in 5th edition, so whatever. But I've always, in my experience, I've had infinitely better results with role playing in AD&D than I ever have in 5th edition. And very much Scott Marsh back in my day. I feel like an old man on a porch all the time. You always play 2 characters each, and the GM would NPC any extras, and that's fair. That's a really good way of doing it as well. All right, so I'm going to be running that tomorrow. I'm really, really looking forward to it. I wanted to look at some of the other stuff in that module, maybe do a little walkthrough of it. But I'm also I can't really talk about it in detail yet. But there's a podcast that I'm going to be going on that's talking about DL1 Dragons of Deceit. And so I'm going to be appearing on that next week, and then that's going to be released. So I'm really looking, I'll let you guys know when it's released. I'm not entirely sure of the exact release schedule at all, but once it's recorded and in the can and ready to be released, they'll let me know, and then I'll let you know. But that should be a lot of fun because it's going to be talking all about Dragonlance, which we should be doing on a Dragonlance anniversary, right? And then what's the last thing? The first thing that was released was DL1 Dragons of Despair for Dragonlance, but then we got a whole bunch of other stuff. So we'll probably rap a little bit about those in a second. I did want to give an update to the DL Saga Anthology. Now, I put out the word that you should start writing your short stories in December. And been reminding you ever since The cutoff date was the 1st. So I think it was on Sunday. This past Sunday was the cutoff date that you would need to have your short story ready and send it to me. I've had 12 stories sent to me that I think are going to be good for the anthology. I've sent contracts out to those 12. I've received many of them back, but not all of them. Unless I have the contract signed, I cannot include a story. If I don't have 12, I'm not sure I have enough for an actual story, like an anthology, you know? Because otherwise it's just a handful of short stories. And that's not really a collection, in my opinion. So I'm hoping I'll have enough. I'll have all of them ready. The 12 is really, it's still going to be pretty short. So basically what I'm type size has gone up over the years, especially with Dragonlance novels. They've gotten bigger and bigger types so that it's, you know, when you get to 320 pages at a larger font size of like 11 or 12, you know, if you put it down to 10 like they used to be, then it's actually much fewer pages. And so the size of the type increases the number of pages. And so the perceived weight, you know, of or value of the book, because there's more pages, is kind of all smoke and mirrors. I've seen publishers where they have ridiculous amount of spacing between lines and paragraphs and huge fonts in order to make 100 pages. And it's just, you're getting robbed because it's a total joke and it's pathetic. I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that when this is put out there, that it's going to be something that people really like and that it's something that they appreciate. Now, I am leaning into the side of things. I was hemming and hawing about this, and maybe I would do a published version of it, but the reality is even though I'm not mentioning the word Dragonlance, which is trademarked, the entire world is de facto wrapped up under that IP. And so I cannot publish it without, you know, infringing on the license holders. And so that would open me up to legal action. And I don't want to do that for obvious reasons. But I do want to have a fan fiction anthology. So this is just a bunch of, just like on a website, you know, we have tons of stuff on Dragonlance Nexus that's all fan fiction and fan ideas for conversions and stuff. You have tons of stuff on a bunch of other websites. You have direct copy and pastes of Dragonlance content from previous modules and stuff in different websites that could easily be attracted legal attention, but aren't. And so I'm hoping this doesn't as well. And the fact that I'm not charging for it. It's going to be all free. So it's, as soon as I have it all together, it's going to be 100% free to anyone who wants to either download the ebook, download the PDF, or download the audiobook, or all three. It's totally up to you how you want to do it. But also, because it's free, I can't do physical printings. That would be a lot more money out of my pocket. And I'm already paying for cover art. Now, this is probably a good time to talk about the cover art. I reached out to one of the famous cover artists of past, and they said that they would love to do it, but it would cost X. And I cannot afford X. It's just too much. And the fact that I'm not making any money off of this, and I'm not going to be able to recoup any of that, is just going to be me throwing the money out there. It's just too much. And so I went to some other independent artists that I thought their work was really nice, and it's much lower cost, but it's still significant. You know, I mean, it's still a big chunk of change here. So I'm going to do that route instead of the official artist route, simply because I can't freaking afford it. And I don't want to crowdsource it because then it's like income, and I don't want to deal with the potential legal repercussions. So I want this to very much be fan made for fans, not for resale or retail. So that all being said, hopefully, I haven't put in the official request. I'm waiting on them to give me the quote, the official quote back. So hopefully that will, I'll get that this week, and then I can send it out. Now, all of the short stories I've gotten, I've edited for grammar and punctuation, and sent it off for approval. And the ones that I've gotten the contracts back, I've already laid out in the book. So the book is already almost completely laid out. I'm just missing a handful of stories. And I've actually already started. I don't know if you can see. I've already started. Oh, yeah, you can't see it all. Some sketches of the short story headers. So for mine, I've got 2 people making out. And for another one, I have like 3 dragons fighting in the sky. And then I've got, all sorts of stuff that's germane to the story. And it doesn't give you any, like, anything, it doesn't give away anything about the story, but it does hopefully give you a little bit of flair and bring you back of nostalgia to the old days when you had illustrations at the top of these things, just so it's a little bit more fun. You know what I mean? Hey, Chronicles of Black Quill, how you doing? Sad you didn't make it in time. Really appreciate it. Oh, no problem. No problem at all. So annoying they won't take the time and effort to do something meaningful with IP. Yeah, I totally agree. That'd be nice. But no. All right, so basically the contracts are out. The art is ready to be ordered, and I'm also illustrating the short story header images. The format of the book is all nailed down, and you know what? Would you guys care? Do you want to hear the very beginning of my short story just for fun? Because it is a celebration of Dragonlance, in my opinion, but it's a little racy, and I wonder if people are going to be okay with it being so racy as a beginning of a story. It needs to be that way because it's the story, but because it leads in so heavily with the implied sex, I could see how it could turn some people off. So, I'm going to read it. I'm going to share. I've already shared you one of the combat sequences that I have in here, and I've adjusted that already. But yeah, here, dig this because it's interesting. All right, so the short story is titled Love's Remains. 39, Pray Catacleus, somewhere west of the Midrath Mountains. I love you, Amara whispered, slowly sliding her hand up Darian's spine, burying her fingers gently into his hair. In response, he pushed his mouth even deeper against hers, playfully letting his tongue explore the tip of hers, then parted. He glided his hands down from framing her face, past her neck, across her shoulders, and down to her arms, lifting them as he slid down her body impossibly slowly, leaving delicate kisses from her neck to her breasts and then to her stomach. Her barely audible moans were all he needed to hear, reaffirming that he was headed in the right direction. He used his right thigh and knee to press between her legs, parting them as his hands slid down her sides. He caressed her breasts slightly on the way to her thighs, pressing them up and outward, opening her to him completely. His tongue began to explore her as he was shaken awake to the sound of screaming all around him. So it's basically a dream sequence that he is having, and then he's like woken to this reality that he finds himself in. And it's like just on the edge of being too graphic. But then when you get to the rest of the story, it's really graphic with violence and stuff. And it's actually a love story. And so I wanted to start off really, really passionately intimate to showcase that these 2 people, Darian and Amara, genuinely love each other and they can lose themselves in each other. And that's a really important story beat for what is to unfold in the short story later on. And it gets freaking crazy, like really quick. It was funny because I was going through this with an editor and they were like, are you sure you want to like that's on the edge of being, inappropriate. There's stuff later on where they're like, you're going to lose on audience members by including the content that you have down here because it's just too much for a lot of people to deal with. And in my head, I'm like, but that's my story. Like, if you don't like it, then you don't have to read it. You can skip it. but it's in a raw time. It's in a raw world. It's supposed to be powerful and impassioned, and you're supposed to feel despair, and you're supposed to feel loss and helplessness and stand up against that and fight against it. That's the point. And so for me, it makes perfect sense. I think for a lot of other people, they're going to hate it. I really think they're just going to hate it. So it doesn't get it more sexual than that, just to be fair. That is the most sexual part. And that's the very beginning of the story. But it's an entry point to give a tip of the cap to let people know that, oh, this is, one, much more visceral than we were expecting. And two, it's going to bring us into a world that is very real and primal, not fluffy and flowery and, whatever. So I was really excited for it, and I've refined that a little bit, maybe 4 or 5 times, trying to get it so it feels right when you read it. But I dig it, so I hope you guys did too. And the other stories that have been submitted, I've really enjoyed them. As with everything, you're going to enjoy some stories more than others because you resonate with the time or the characters or whatever. But I think they're all very good, and not all of them are set on Krynn, in at all. Some of them are in their own IPs and like original worlds. And that's a lot of fun because then it truly is a fan fiction anthology. Either fans creating their own worlds or fans telling stories in someone else's world, but it's all meant to just be a whole or a tip of the tongue. Look, everyone needs loving, all right? Make sure if they want it, you give it to them. And so that's the vibe I'm going for, is just a really great fan anthology that is logical, that is entertaining, and that is worth the time that I'm putting into it, because I'm putting into a lot of time into this damn thing. And if it doesn't get put out there because there's too few stories, I'm going to be pissed. Because I don't want to release something with like 3 stories in it, That would suck. That'd be lame. Tell the story that you chose to tell. Let the reader know ahead what's up. See, but I don't do, like, this is me telling you guys what's coming. I don't do ratings. Like, in my opinion, that beginning is PG-13 because it doesn't explicitly say anything raw. It just implies it. So everything is PG-13 in my opinion on this channel. So that's all the warning that I'm giving people. And there's not going to be anything in the book that says content warning, blah. Like, I don't play those games. Like, if you're an adult and you're reading this, then you're going to get it. If you're a kid and you're reading it, then, any kid can pick up a Stephen King novel. Any kid can log on their iPad and look at, pornography, unfortunately. So this is neither of those things. So that's where I live. Anyway, yeah, so what is it about Dragonlance that pulls you guys back to it? Let's just talk a little bit about the anniversary that it is for Dragonlance. And while, let me know in the chat, why do you come back to Dragonlance? Let's, I actually want to show this. The very first Dragonlance calendar. Ooh, that's a really fast switch over. I don't like that. Hold a tick. All right, that's better. So this is, I just found 2 images on a search engine search because I don't have this version. This is the very, very first calendar that was ever released in 1984 of Dragonlance. And I wish I had it. It would be a great collector's item. I have the next year's that was released, which is the full traditional calendar. And I've got all the Dragonlance calendars that have ever been released at this point. Took me about a year to collect them all. But, this is the presentation of it. You didn't really know what to expect. You got this really great artwork by Elmore. You got this really great Celtic influence. It doesn't tell you anything except there's a blue dragon in the background, and you've got some traditional Dungeons and Dragons heroes, just sort of standing there posed. And here's something that we need to remember. When this was released, you didn't really have this type of artwork for Dungeons and Dragons. You had the player's handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide and stuff, but it wasn't like, the interior artwork was just high quality or anything. It was all illustrations, I mean, they were good illustrations, but that's all it was illustrations, not like full paintings and stuff. And even the other supplements that had been released by other artists were basically colorized drawings and illustrations. They weren't like full-blown paintings like we got as soon as Dragonlance came out. And so this was a sea change for Dungeons and Dragons in presentation, as well as the approach, because again, it's been modules, and the modules had loose connections between each other, but it wasn't narrative or story focused. It was always just, you have a bunch of characters, throw them into this dungeon and experience it. Dragonlance upended everything with Dungeons and Dragons and said, no, we're going to do story first, and the players are going to be a part of the story, an integral part of the story. And while some people complained about railroading and stuff, the vast majority of people, as proven by its incredible popularity and success, loved it. And they loved being a part of this story, even before the books were out. It wasn't until November in '84. This was in March when it was released, the first adventure. So it wasn't until November that the first book was released. And it was months after that before it became popular. And so no one had read the novel by the time a handful of the adventures were out already, which just tells you that people were okay with a new experience and trying something different at their Dungeons & Dragons tables, especially with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. And so to have a module that, if you've never played Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, it's only tough if you don't think. If you're a considerate player and imaginative, then it's not hard at all. But you have to think and play that way. If you just want to run up and bash every monster you see, you're probably going to be killed pretty quick, because you don't have healing as with the first module when it was released. All the way to the end of the module, you have one staff that has a set of charges. There are a lot of charges, to be fair, that can heal. But only certain types of players can even touch the staff, let alone use it, right? So you really have to like hyper protect Goldmoon in order to have any heals at all, because the only way you heal one hit point is by a full day of rest, not doing anything else. You can't travel. You can't do anything. You just lay down and rest. And there weren't non-weapon proficiencies like in second edition. I mean, they were teased in 1.5, but in second edition, you could use the healing non-weapon proficiency to speed up healing or to give an instant healing boost to players. But that didn't exist in first edition. And so you really were at the mercy of rest. And it was meant to hyper focus you on the idea that a combat situation, if you've ever been in a physical fight in your life, a combat situation is exhaustive, and you're supposed to rest after them. You're not supposed to go from one battle to another battle to another battle. That's just not realistic, even in a fantasy world. You're meant to face a monster or a conflict and then rest for a while to recuperate. And then you go back in and, face more, and then you rest and recuperate. You're supposed to have these huge breaks, not burning this imaginary idea of hit dice in order to get hit points back, which makes no sense at all in any world. I just don't understand what the concept behind that is. If you burn hit dice, it seems like you should lose hit points because your hit points are based on your hit die. You shouldn't be gaining more. That doesn't make any sense. So all of the modern rules and adjustments to make players survivable and last a long time did not exist back in the day. You can't just second win like the Ultimate Warrior, shaking your hand on the top ropes and get more power back. Or, Rocky Balboa, when he gets knocked down hard enough, he just decides to heal back up and come back tougher. That's not a thing. So you really, really had to rest and plan on resting. And so it made surviving really, really difficult, especially without magic. I mean, infinitely more without magic, healing magic. So you really had to just think a lot more, and that made it much more engaging, and danger was much more visceral and real because you saw it. You know, you could sort of, if you met a troll for the first time, you don't know what the hell that is. So, and you know that you can't heal very fast. And so you have this massive lumbering monstrosity sort of coming toward you, wanting to feast on your bones. What do? Well, let's try to hit it and let's see what happens. And you hit it and you see its skin close back up and you're like, you know what? I'm going to choose life and just pop smoke out of there. Because you don't want to risk it. You don't know what it can do, but you know that if it doesn't go down when you first hit it, it's probably going to be really deadly and it's going to hurt you. So every time you met a new monster in Dungeons and Dragons, it was a crapshoot on whether or not you dared face it or not, because you just didn't know, you know? And experiencing those encounters with monsters for the very first time is thrilling. I remember in the game that I just ran with some people on Tuesday nights, when we first came across a gelatinous cube, most of them had never faced one in combat before. They've just seen it in popular culture or in a film or something. But that's it. And so they had no idea how to face off against it. And that's exciting because then you're sort of like really thinking and considering and debating with other players and stuff. And that's what's really, really fun, in my opinion, about this game, is that it forces you to genuinely work together in order to live. Otherwise, you ain't living. It's that simple. I did want to get to the... Oh, geez, I'm going to have to go to the very back here. I wanted to get to... Here we go, the appendices. So the trade metals are steel, gold, silver, copper, iron, platinum, and bronze. And it's all broken down by that. However, in the Seeker lands where the adventure takes place, the standard steel coin is called an EMAS, and gold has no value at all. And so you have to break down how to... oh, my face is in the way. Let me move it down. In the Seeker lands, which is basically Abyssinia, this is how you value steel EMAS, and it's going to be completely different in Dragonlands because they do go in gold piece weight of steel, which equals a different total. And so you're going to have different exchange rates depending on where you are in this world as presented right off the bat. That's kind of cool. I mean, it's a pain in the ass to do as a player and stuff like that. But I think it's really kind of cool as far as setting up the world to show, no. Everywhere is not the same. We do not have a homogeneous universe of exchange. Everyone values things slightly differently, depending on their needs and the culture and, you know, everything else. And so when you think about that, you think, well, that's kind of how it is now in our world, right? We have different exchange rates for different monetary values based on global currency and stuff. I mean, that's how we live right now. You travel to Germany from the United States, and your euro is going to be a different value than your dollar. And you just have to have that exchange. So they did it in a game before anyone else that I'm aware of did it in a game. Again, it can be kind of a pain in the ass, but it's still kind of fun. It's, you know, as far as immersion goes, it's kind of fun. I like it. I don't know. I dig that stuff. What do you guys think? Is it too much of a pain in the ass to deal with exchange rates differences, or do you dig it? All right, so let's see what you guys have to say here. Working so hard to get the story done. Talk about a rabbit hole. Thoroughly enjoying the process, though. That's cool. Didn't have much to choose from back then. Everything anyone got consumed by you and your friends. DL for you was a lot of things. First, pre-gen characters, and you enjoyed that a lot. The DM sat us each down and said, You think you'd make a great Raceland? Oh, that's cool. Is it though? Is that a good thing? I don't know. He's like, you look like you could be a narcissist. Thanks, GM. I appreciate that. You like 2E above all others? That's fair. It's a good game system, I think. I prefer AD&D, but I play a lot of 2E. Thanks for tuning in, Cody. Or David, I mean. Not having healing makes it a lot more difficult. It was also the first time for you in a long campaign, not just one-off dungeon after dungeon. That's the thing for me that made Dragonlance really, really interesting, is that the idea of a campaign did not exist in my vernacular for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons or Dungeons & Dragons. I came up with the Holmes box set, and so I was just doing, and you could only go up to level 3, and so it was just like, well, let's run through these different, dungeons, literally dungeons that we just made up, and then you're level 3, let's start all over. And then with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, it was just, oh, let's just play this adventure, guys. Let's just see what happens. Not a module, not like an official adventure. We just would make up stories, and then we would, roll our players through them, and then stop. And then someone else would say, hey, I got a story I want to take you through. And they would just do their own little adventure, mini adventure. And so it was always these little episodic experiences. There wasn't like this grand campaign of connected world or anything like that. And it wasn't until Dragonlance that I even thought in the terms of, oh, you can take a character from the very beginning of a career to a very end of the career through a huge story. Never considered that. I always just thought it would, because characters died so much. I just figured, each game was its own little thing. Each session its own little thing. Very episodic TV type vibe. The video game era wasn't the best thing for pencil and paper role-playing game systems. No, I mean, I'm not sure the context that you think people used video games because you think people being used to video games caused players to change their concept of role-playing games. Oh, interesting. Certainly probably in modern eras. Back in like the Nintendo Entertainment System and earlier systems, like the first one and before that, video games were hard. They were not easy at all. And if you died, you started from the very beginning of the game. You didn't start from your save pickup point or, the level or whatever. You just started the whole damn thing over again, like arcade games. And so, like, gaming was really hard, whether it was Advanced Dungeons & Dragons or whether it was arcade games or whether it was like, I remember Dragon Warrior was my first role-playing game, and I desperately love it to this day. And it, you played a character, and if you died, you just sort of picked back up and moved on. And that was kind of the first time that I got the idea of, oh, we can come back, like you can survive death. That was never, like, we never had resurrection abilities in my games or raise the dead abilities. Like, it was just not a thing because we didn't have these long campaigns. And so we knew it could be done. Like, certain races could be resurrected and stuff. And if you had certain stats, you could be resurrected. But we just never had a career for characters long enough. You think people being used to video... Okay, so you came back to Dragonlance because the characters were your first friends, the journey, the epic adventures, and the world gave you a place safe and a haven from suffering you face in the world. That's totally fair. That's valid. I remember there was one point I had read a bunch of the early Dragonlance novels, and I was a kid. I went to my mom. I was like, yeah, these books are really teaching me a lot about life. And she just started laughing. She's like, no, life teaches you about life. Books can't teach you about life. But I did learn a lot of things reading the Dragonlance novels. Through the chronicles and the legends, you're dealing with stuff like sexual assault, inappropriate sexual advances. You're learning about alcoholism, codependency. You're learning about being a straight up douchebag magic user and hating on the rest of the world. Clinging on to every past misdeed done to you, but also being affectionate and looking past racial biases, appreciating people for who they are, not who you expect them to be or want them to be, shaking loose those shackles of bigotry and hate. Like that's what I learned through Dragonlance. And I mean, I wasn't raised in the type of household that was filled with bigotry at all. So it wasn't like an issue I had to get past, but it's just one of those reinforcing ideals that I experienced as a young man. And I really appreciated stuff like that, Um, I didn't get it from anything else. And maybe it is in other IPs or stories. I never got it from Lord of the Rings. I never got that stuff. What other stories did I read as a kid? From like Knights, King Arthur stories. I never got it from that. And so to have it in Dragonlance, at such a young age too, it stuck under my skin and it's never come out since. It's just sort of been ever present in who and what I am. And it's helped in a very small way, arguably. It's helped inform the way that I view the world. And because of that, I just have this real affection for it. When life is getting really tough, I can always return to these old companions and sharing a bunch of laughs because there's some really funny moments and there's some genuinely tender moments. If I'm sad about something and I want to share that or have a catharsis from that sadness, I can read about Flint, and I can read about Sturm. And those emotions are as raw today as they were the first time I read them as a child. Because we all share those experiences. I would imagine, it'd be shocking if you're watching this and you didn't experience loss or pain. So we've all experienced that. We know those emotions all too well. So we can empathize with the characters when they're experiencing them and it comes out through our emotions, it's just absolutely beautiful. Another first for you was the lot of overland travel. That's a huge point too, because while Advanced Dungeons and Dragons did talk a lot about creating these milieus and having, building out the campaign world, you didn't do a lot of it. And this presented you with and I know Greyhawk already existed. I'd never played Greyhawk, so this was my first exposure to large land masses where it took genuine travel time to get from A to B. And you had to deal with random monster encounters and locations and all sorts of dangers along the way. Remember getting enough steel coins in a horde and he ended up melting them to make armor? There's actually a pretty good little story about that too, in one of the later anthologies. You don't mind exchange rates. It's hard pill to swallow, and 2E primarily was developed with Tracy and Margaret had left TSR, which is why 2nd edition Dragonlance was not their preferred era. Oh, yeah. Yeah. They were done with DLA. Like, that was it. They were complete. They came back for a History of Dragonlance source book, but other than that, they didn't really deal with it because they were focusing on Toladas. TSR was. And it wasn't until that failed that they put out Tales of the Lance box set, which brought Dragonlance back around. Oh, modern game era of healing. Yeah, no, you're 100% right with that. Cynthia Williams and TSR made certain rules and standards in Arrow, which to hear some TSR alum talk was absolutely excruciating. Many of the characters were flawed, but still pulled together and did right. Well, DCBs, that's another thing that resonated with me is that, and I'm sure you guys are exactly the same. We're all flawed humans, right? Even people that you consider your friends, sometimes you got those friends you're like, ooh, I can't bring them around this other person because they're X or Y, they're just not going to get along with this other person. I have friends that my other friends would not like. And so I just isolate myself with the people that I like because I know that I can't ever get everyone together because they're totally different people. And you all must be the same, right? You have certain people that they have genuine flaws. Maybe they're going through things that are difficult. Maybe they're just straight up assholes because some people are just dicks, straight up. That's just the way they are. It doesn't mean you don't like them in some cases, but like Chevy Chase was just a fucking dick. He was just an asshole, but people loved him, even though he was a total asshole. You just have those types of people in the world. And so you have to kind of look past their flaws or the parts of them that you really appreciate are greater or speak louder than their flaws. But we're all flawed humans, and we all have to deal with that. And that's what's so great about these characters, to get back to your point, is that they're believable. And because they're believable, they're relatable. And so you connect with them on a level that's so much more real. And that's what I really love about it. Let's see. You picked up Autumn Twilight in '84. Wow. When you were on a grocery store book, you were 9. You still have that copy? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's really great. Walden Books is where you bought your Dragonlance. I remember Walden Books. I don't think we have any where I live anymore. DL literally guided you through an incredibly violent and abusive upbringing. Oh, I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. Thanks for tuning in, man. You disappear into Krynn to hide from your life, but it gave you hope to believe in good versus evil and good prevailing. So ultimately, you became a responder. Oh, that's fantastic. That's a great arc. Congratulations. That's awesome. You read a lot. It's only in Dragonlance, to be honest. Your players still bitch and moan about coins. You can't auto-convert until you're in a town. And well, there's that. There's also the idea that it's going to cost something to convert. No one's just going to do it because a bank has to make money. And so, they have shareholders. So it's going to cost X amount to exchange all of your money. So there's not a 1-to-1 ratio no matter what. And that goes for buying equipment too. Like you should, in all of your home games, make sure you're doing this. If your heroes are not known in a town, they're probably going to bump up the prices of things just a little bit. Just a little bit. And when you become familiar, they might go down a little bit. And you become friendly, they might go down a little bit more. Always keep that in mind. And if you're going to sell something, it's not a 1-for-1 ratio. It's either used or potentially stolen. So they're going to give you pennies to the dollar of the value of the item, especially with exchanging like money for gems or gems for money. Gems are a great way of transporting a whole lot of money, but you're never going to get a 1-to-1 ratio of exchange. So always make sure you got that markup built in. And it's got to be based on personal knowledge of the individual, their race, sometimes their gender, sometimes their class. There's going to be these biases built in, just like in the real world for exchange rates. It makes it so much more realistic, and it makes players consider about where they go to get equipment or to sell equipment. And that makes the world more real, in my opinion. Chalk and cheese. You like to convert your coinage and gems whenever possible? Yeah, that's funny. I was right on your brain wavelength there. Literally the heroes, it's awesome. Yeah, Kender can always use coins as ammo. That's true. Yeah, I've never been beamed in the head with a quarter, and I don't want to be. Carrying capacity is what GM likes to remind you of. Yeah, for sure. It can get pretty ridiculous and granular. I like to take a little bit of an abstract approach to it, but at least keep it in mind. Proverb, a Kender never carries his own money. Yeah. We've left lesser coinage on the ground because we couldn't carry it. Yeah, for sure. I mean, why would anyone try to carry 2,000 copper? Are you out of your mind? That's the reason why it's collected wherever you found it, because no one wants it. It's totally worthless. Wait till you get that platinum or that steel, then start thinking about stuffing your pockets. But all right, that's kind of all I wanted to do, is just chit chat about Dragonlance for a little bit on its anniversary and have a little bit of fun, share some of the projects that I'm dealing with that deal directly with Dragonlance. And of course, this Saturday, I've got my Tyranny of Dragons campaign that I'm running with a bunch of wonderful player characters and players. I hope you guys are enjoying that if you happen to tune into it. I have been putting off some of my regular shows because I've been working on the anthology. That's going to continue until all my illustrations are done. But once I'm caught up on my illustrations, then I'm going to get right back into my normal schedule of putting out content for everything. Because today was the anniversary, I really wanted to do a show. So that's it. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I really appreciate you guys chiming in. And thanks for tuning in chat after being a lurker. I appreciate that. I really do. All right. That's it for today's Dragonlance Hangout. Do you guys celebrate Dragonlance's anniversary? Do you even pay attention to it? Is it odd to have such an affinity for a campaign setting? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I would like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. It all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of Dragonlance Saga. I hope you'll join in that celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Sláinte mhar.